I've never had anything but my Nest Protects connected to anything but the Nest app. I want it all integrated to my Home Assistant so that all my notifications come from the same source. So today what we're going to do is we're going to connect these Nest Protects to my Home Assistant and use NodeRED to send me alerts should something occur. All right, to get started, we need to make sure that you have a Nest integration to begin with. And I am using the YAML. So go to configuration, and everything's under integrations now in Home Assistant. So we'll go over there and look. Even if I'm using YAML, it still shows up in here. So you can see that I have my Nest configured via the YAML file. And it's real simple. I just have a couple of lines in there for my Nest configuration. You got to be careful with this whole thing because back in a few months or so ago, Nest got bought out by Google, and when they did that, they said they're getting rid of the API access. So, or at least you can't create a developer account to allow API access. And so you can read this here. Here's a link that I can show you, or I'll link this down below, right? So basically, if you don't have a Nest developer account, you can't do this. However, you can, because there is a thermostat integration that is a stopgap. And I'm hearing rumors, although not verified, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, that there will be a replacement, or they'll let it work again or something like that. For that reason, I haven't actually added any other Nest devices to my environment because I don't want to mess it up. As soon as you add another Nest device, they force you to transition to Google's authentication, which then doesn't work with Nest or doesn't work with Home Assistant, except for maybe this right here. So I haven't tried this part, but there's a couple links I'll link below. The part I'm going to show you today is once you do get it working with Home Assistant, how to use NodeRED to send you alerts and stuff like that. So with that in mind, make sure you are configured, make sure you show devices. I have a Protect, a thermostat, another Protect, and another thermostat. So I have 3 Nest Protects, which are the smoke CO alarms, and then I have 2 thermostats for up and downstairs. All right, so let's go back over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and fire up NodeRED because that's where we're going to start. The other thing I'll say is smoke detectors and the carbon monoxide detectors are life and death type items. I'm comfortable with putting them through Home Assistant because they have their own alerting mechanism. Obviously, if you're in the house, they're going to start beeping. I also am comfortable with my setup and the reliability I have with my pushover alerts and other things occurring and how long my system has been running in production. So if something does occur, it will alert me and I will be able to do something about it. You need to use this at your own risk and make sure that the setup you're using is adequate for protecting your property, your family, your loved ones, etc. So that's my disclaimer. Use this at your own risk. My setup is my environment. It works for me. All right, with that being said, let's go over to NodeRED and get started on this. Let's jump over to the playground flow here. And I'm going to build this one step at a time for you. So the first thing I want a state node. I've made many other videos regarding NodeRED and Home Assistant and doing things with it. So go back and watch those if you have questions. All right, so we're going to call this one, let's just say living room smoke. And for the living room smoke, I'm going to look for the smoke detectors, and so I have a whole bunch of them listed here, but the one I'm going to use is going to be the living room Nest Protect smoke status, because that gives me a string value of what the status is. All right, so it's going to be exact, and I'm going to pass all states, so I'm not going to set a value in this field right here, and I want output on connect. All right, so that's that living room smoke, and then what I want to do with that, since there are multiple states available, and you can see that in 2 different places. This is the Nest developers web page. You can see the values returned for the CO alarm state and the smoke alarm state. Both of them return OK, warning, and emergency. And if you look at the Nest integration, the same thing occurs, but the difference here is, if I can find it down here, is it returns 3 different statuses. It OK, warning, or emergency, but they're capitalized. So I'm going to use a switch node, and the switch node is case sensitive, I found out. If I'm wrong, throw a comment down below, but I'm pretty sure it didn't work when I was doing lowercase OK versus uppercase OK. I'm going to leave it as, or I'm going to call this smoke status. And I'm going to add 3 conditions. I have the first one already here, so I'm going to add 2 more because I'm going to grab OK, warning, and emergency. So the first one is OK. The second one is a warning. And the third one is emergency. Now again, since they're case sensitive, I could go with the Nest integration and say, okay, it's going to be capital O, capital W, capital E. But in my case, I want to make double, triple sure that I'm actually getting a value. I'd rather err on the side of too much alerting than none at all if something were to occur. So rather than trying to specify capital OK for this switch, I'm going to do a regex match. And I'm going to say OK still, but I'm going to mark ignore case. Now if it's capital O or lowercase o, I'll still get this path to activate. Same thing with these other 2. So I'll just change those to match as regex. And I'll ignore case on both of those. And we're done with that one. And we'll tie these together. And if you hover over this, you'll see that this will match regex OK, this one matches regex warning, and this one matches regex emergency. And this allows you to do stuff with it as you go along. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to create a function. Actually, I'm going to have 2 functions. So I'll just drag a function over here. And because I'm sending this to my pushover API, or the pushover API, I have to rewrite it so that it will send an appropriate message. So the first thing I'll do is add some JSON. There you go. All right, so we have that, and then we will return that message. So this is the message block, and we're returning that message from the function over to our pushover API. And that's it. I don't have any red X's over here, which means it's happy about my JSON. And as usual, I forgot to name it, so let's go back and name it. I will call this warning. And we'll copy this and do the same thing. And we will call this one emergency. This is the simple version. There are ways to take the payload and bring it across and then just extract the payload into this function, so you just really have only one function and it just changes the name of the payload and the name of the topic based on the previous status. So if it came across as OK or warning or emergency, you could send that across. I'm doing the simple version again, so I can see step by step how the path is going to alert me. And in the case of the smoke alarm, I'd rather have these discrete steps than having a function in the middle somewhere that I don't see, so that I make sure that it's set up right and that it works in the case that something were to actually happen and I would need to get those warnings and alerts. So I will call this emergency. And the same thing for the topic. And we're done with that. So now we will attach these to their respective outputs off of the switch. And now we will add a pushover API. I will search for that one, or a pushover node. Put that right here. And all you need to do here, since you've already created the payload and the topic within these functions, is just attach that over to the pushover node. And anytime that this path is enabled or fires off or whatever is triggered, it will push it all the way through to the pushover API. And I'll just deploy that. All right, so there's a couple different ways you can go here now. You can go with either creating another one of these for each one of yours, each one of your protects. And again, discrete components for me are probably better. So I'll show you a different option, which may or may not be the way you want to go. I can take this same event state and I can add it, double click it here, and I can configure it for a different smoke detector. So we'll say upstairs this time. So upstairs Nest Protect smoke status. And same thing, everything stays the same, output on connect. And I can just take this one and I can feed it directly into this switch. The difference is, well, there's no difference really at this point. What I didn't specify in the functions is what area of the building this is coming from. So what I could do here, if I wasn't using the upstairs and the living room smoke separately, is I could put, for example, living smoke warning here, and then living smoke emergency on the other one. And then when it sent the message through, it would send me the location of where it was. In this case, since I'm using a generic, upstairs smoke will fire off and go through the switch, and then it'll send me a warning to my pushover. If both of them trigger at the same time, that's the question. The thing is, I can't necessarily test this I can't set smoke upstairs and smoke in the living room at the same time on my production smoke detectors to know whether or not there will be some sort of contention that causes it to fail. So again, I'm all about using discrete components in this case, just so that I get everything along its own path and I don't have any issues with something failing because there's a contention between something using two switch nodes. Again, if you understand the switch node better and you say, no, it's fine, it'll queue those, or it'll just handle it just fine, let me know in the comments, and then I will become educated. But in the meantime, what I can do is just copy this and then paste it using Control-C, Control-V, and I'll just take this right here and we'll tie it together. And I could go back and change these as well to where the location is. I'll leave that for later on when I'm messing around. But then I can deploy here, and now I have both the living room and the upstairs smoke. If there's a status change into warning or emergency, it will send me a pushover alert. The second part of this too is we have this whole thing set up for smoke detection. What happens if the carbon monoxide alerts? Well, looking at our developers page here, you get the same stuff here for alarm for carbon monoxide. So in that case, I can just, again, copy this whole thing, Control-C, Control-V that thing, and then put it somewhere similar to where this other one is. Now, this is where you can start combining things for these kinds of switches. You could just, instead of saying smoke status and smoke emergency or whatever, you could change this to generic warning or emergency, and then send the living room and the carbon monoxide smoke or status straight through, since they're both emergency and warning, and have it just do that. Again, for the 50th time today, discrete status. So I'm going to make this one, we'll make this one carbon monoxide. So instead of smoke, we will look for, and I'm going to have to search for this one. I think living room, we'll see if it comes up as CO or something like that. Living room. So we have, here it is, living room, Nest Protect CO status. And leave it blank again. And instead of being smoke status, we'll make this one. Nope, not the switch. We're just going to change the name. We'll make this switch called CO status. So carbon monoxide. And you can come over here to these and change these as well. Instead of saying smoke warning, we'll say CO warning. and CO emergency. And on this one, just for fun of it, I will just put, for abbreviation, living CO warning, or living RM probably. How about living RM? And again, same thing. You know what? Actually, I'm just going to abbreviate this a little bit. LVNGRM. Some devices have a limit to the amount of space you can see it, so I want to be able to get a concise indication of where this is. So this is an example of how you can specify in the function what it is. So living CO warning, and you would do the same thing here, living CO emergency. So we'll come and change this to living CO emergency. Make sure you don't mess it up without the quote. And the same thing for the topic. All right, so those are done. And we'll deploy. Oops. We'll hit deploy without dragging it. All right, so our smoke, oops, sorry about that. Let's change this to CO because I changed the entity, but I didn't change the name, so this is living room CO. All right, so there you go. You have your living room, carbon monoxide, living room smoke, and upstairs smoke. And you would do the same thing. You would just keep building these out. And if you feel like you want to combine those into the same switch and be more generic, that's fine too. Totally up to you how you use that. So that is the simple way of doing things with that. It'll get you a warning to push over, and it allows you to use those Nest Connects to do something other than just sit there and talk to their Nest app. So if you have any questions, just let me know. If you have any comments on a better way to do that, let me know as well in the comments below. So there's one other thing you can do with this to get a general overall indication of the health of the area where your Nest Protects are, and that's a color code. And so what I can do here is I can choose for the entity, I can choose living room, and it should have color status. There's living room Nest Protect color status, and I'll say living color for the title. And you can create these same flows and do stuff with them based on the color. So you have gray, green, yellow, or red, and it indicates a device status. So it's basically telling you the condition of all of the vital functions, the battery, the smoke, and the CO state. So if you're green, everything's good. And then if you're yellow or red, then there's some other issue. Gray, I think, means you may be offline. But you can do some other stuff with this. So if you come over to your NodeRED, you can create another switch that's got the colors on it. If it returns the colors, then you can specify a function to do something and send it out to push over. You can send it to your other systems. You can make lights flash. That's the other thing that's really cool that I think we could try to do as well. Is just an example I'll show you really fast. Let's say you have a warning or emergency from these CO statuses. I'm going to borrow something from my alarm actions over here. I'm going to copy a whole block of stuff. If my alarm system becomes triggered, it turns everything on. So if I copy all of these right here, these are all my lights, so it turns all my lights on. And I come over to my playground and I post those guys right here with a Control V. Now I have all of these lights, and if I get an emergency, I can then take all of this. I don't want that one, that's the alarm, so let's get rid of that one. But I can turn on all of the lights in the house. Let me get this one out of the way here. Just by having, in addition to sending the pushover alert, firing off the service that turns on all the lights. And I want to do this so that if there's a smoke emergency, number one, it lights up the house. And kind of if you're sleeping, it's another indicator to wake you up. But the second part is that you can see where you're going to get out of the house. So I can just fire all these up. So I won't do any more. But you get the point, right? So you can take and just basically call a script. I'll show you what it looks like here. So I do a switch, turn on, and then the name of the entity, the switch, the deck lights. So that's actually two separate lights outside. So I can turn everything on so you can see where to go. So that's just another example. There's tons of things. You can take your entities and do all kinds of stuff with them using these automations. So that's it for reals this time. If you have any questions, throw them down below. If you have better ways to do it, I'm always open to hearing those, and just let me know in the comments. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope it was helpful and you liked it. If you do, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. Leave me any comments and any suggestions you have for future videos. And tell your friends. Also hit that subscribe button. Consider either joining my Patreon as a patron or dropping me a buck or two in my Ko-fi account. And we'll see you on the next video.